Genius, it takes a lot to get on my show. Genius, you're probably someone we'd like to know. You're really good at stuff, you probably like to dance. You like long walks and you wear clean pants. Genius, get onto my show.
Howdy, folks. Well, I'm back in the saddle again with Living with a Genius interviews. It's been about 2 years, I think, since my last interview, and coupled with very little face-to-face human contact over this last year, I was a little unsure about how it would all come off. But here we are with today's guest, founding director of vocal arts at the California School of the Arts, Katherine Powers. I've known Katherine for a few years now as both a singing colleague and as the fellow director at Orchestra Los Angeles, which I co-founded with her and her husband, Michael. We get at it in this chat, everything from her background as an actress and singer to her role in running an arts conservatory and even into the esoterics of teaching, singing, and music in general. I hope you enjoy our conversation, and as always, thanks for listening.
I still can't believe I am having twins. It just blows my
it's
mind,
amazing.
like, every day.
It's amazing. I'm so happy for you guys. It's just terrific. And you've gotten a lot of practice with Luke, and you've got. I think you're going to be better off.
Where are you going? A lot of practice, like all the sex we've been having.
Yeah, lots and lots.
Where's that going? Yeah. Well, practice to a certain degree, certainly.
Yeah.
I haven't spent a lot of time in my life with newborns, so that'll definitely be a crash course. So I'm doing 2 at once to just try to make up for it and catch up. So
it kind of takes care of it. It takes care of itself. I mean, it's amazing. The first, when we had Will, I was pretty calm. I'm an only child, and so I'm used to getting all the attention, and I'm a little bit self-centered, and I remember when we had Will, we were in the hospital, and the whole time leading up to that, I was doing all the things. I was exercising like 7 days a week. I think I was in really good shape. I was saving my money, but then I was also like really stressed out because I wasn't sure about how my career was going to go, how we were going to afford it, all these things. And then we had Will in the delivery room, and they put Will on Amy's chest, and he like latched on and started breastfeeding like almost right away. Wow. And then this weird thing happened where I thought, oh, like this has been happening for hundreds of thousands of years.
This is a thing that humans do.
Like you can, like you can have a baby anywhere, and it's really, and like you can feed it, and you can, and then everything just kind of figure it out as it's this very slow evolution. And now, like, my career's good, and the house is in shape, and we have, it's just like all the things that I couldn't visualize happening realistically have all like fallen into place. So, you figure it out a little bit at a time.
You mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you just wake up one day, and kind of like that Talking Heads song, like, where did this come from? You just wake up one day and you have all the stuff. I don't know. You figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I see that evolution happening for us in like the last few years with my job, and now Michael's got his job, and we just moved to a bigger place for the twins, and my life is unrecognizable from where it was 6 years ago. Like it's totally different.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a second. When I first met you, I think you came over to our house when Liz and Nelson were living here, and you and Liz sat in the downstairs room where the fireplace is and kind of caught up.
Talk about a former life. That's where I knew Liz from like my schmactory days.
Yeah. When I
was acting.
Okay. So so just so you know, this interview started, by the way. So let's go back to, let me just turn down my mic. I think I just, yeah. Okay. It's a little loud.
Hey.
So I'm trying to figure this out. This is, by the way, just for those of you watching, this is my first Zoom interview ever. And I haven't done an interview in, probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years, which I used to do one every week I have 91 or 92 interviews already. And
I've listened to many of them. I'm quite honored.
So I hope I know how to talk to people.
I'm quite honored.
And talk to people. And it's been a year since I've been in front of anybody, so I don't know.
But you've got a really good gambit, though, because I think your interviewees are always wondering, am I the genius? Or is
That's
boom.
the secret.
Exactly.
I get asked that a lot, actually.
I know, and you've got a very clever answer. I forget what it was, but it was non-committal. I do remember that.
I forget what it was too, so we'll make something up on the way. So yeah, let's talk about what were you doing before you got into music? How did you get into music? Why did you get into music? Were your parents musical? I mean, did it start there? What's the story?
Gosh, it was kind of an accident. My parents were in television production. My mom and dad were both producers, and then my father was a writer, and my mom was a director. And so at 10 years old, I decided that I wanted to be an actor. So my mom took some pictures of me herself and sent pictures to agents, and one of them picked me up. And my first audition was for a Jell-O commercial. It was when Jell-O first came out with the little cups of pre-made Jell-O. They were called Jigglers. And everybody asked me this. No, Bill Cosby was not in this commercial. But that was my first audition, and I booked it. And I was just like totally hooked from 10 years old, acting.
Was this in Canada? Was it?
Yeah. This was in Toronto.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I grew up in Toronto. So I just really liked being on set. I just thought it was so fun and interesting. And I was kind of precocious and talkative and, liked sort of feeling like one of the adults. And, on set, they treat the kids both as very special, but also like you're there to do a job. So it just felt... I just really liked it. So I went to high school for the school for the arts. I started in 7th grade, or grade 7, as we say in Canada.
Sure.
And I went in the drama program. And I was there for 2 years. I was still auditioning. And so this is how I got interested in music. It was a total fluke on Remembrance Day, which is Veterans Day here. This is November 11th, which happens to be my birthday. So it felt particularly auspicious. There was we have like an assembly, and the choir sang the song called In Remembrance. So like Canadians wear poppies, little poppy pins on Remembrance Day. And they talk about Flanders Fields. And there was this beautiful song, this a cappella song that the choir sang. And I just remember being like, I want to do that. I just thought it was so beautiful. I still remember the song. It was absolutely exquisite. And so on a total whim, I auditioned for the music program and I got in. Didn't really have I think I played a little piano. I didn't have much training. And I had a great teacher. I had one of those teachers, So we entered the Kiwanis Festival every year, which is the big music festival in Toronto, and our choir won first place. Like all of our choirs, our women's choir, our men's choir, our small choir, like we always won first place. So I kind of took it for granted at the time, but looking back, I was like, damn, like she was probably a really good teacher.
Yeah.
Her name was Gloria Ghastly, and we're still connected. I actually just gave a master class to her students at Western University over Zoom, and it was like this amazing full circle.
Oh, that's terrific.
I actually wrote to her. I was like, please let me give you a master class for free. If you'll consider, I would be so honored. And she was like, of course. And it was awesome.
Oh.
So yeah, I fell in love with music, but I was still acting. And I just never occurred to me that music was like a career.
Isn't that funny? That's pretty common.
Yeah. Really?
People ask whenever I say I'm an opera singer, sometimes say 50% of the time they either say something about Phantom of the Opera, or they say what else do you do?
Oh God. A Phantom of the Opera. Yeah, definitely got it. Or Cats is my favorite opera, or
Yeah.
name something that's not an opera, and you don't want to be a jerk, so you're like, love Cats. I do love Cats, actually.
It's not an opera, and I hate cats anyway.
Yeah, right. Actually, my cat is like circling me like a shark right now. I was just really obsessed with acting. I wanted to move to LA and be a film actor. That's what I wanted. And I was adamant that I did not go to college. I only wanted to go to acting conservatory. I remember very vividly being like, I don't want to have to study English and history. Blech, I just want to study acting. And now, I ended up spending most of my 20s in school, which is ironic. But
Sure.
So I moved to LA at 18 to go to theater school. I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts.
Now, did you have a job lined up, or how did you do it?
No, I was Canadian, so I couldn't even work. I was on a student visa. So by the grace of my parents who paid for it,
sure,
that's how I did it. Yeah.
Sure.
I studied. I worked in the first year. I got to stage manage the company shows. So the third year was this company of actors that you had to be invited to be part of, which I actually ended up doing in my third year. But my first year, I stage managed, and I actually really liked it. It appealed to my type A.
Yeah, I can see you being very good at that. Yeah,
I can take that as a compliment.
It is. Please do. No. I would be terrible at it. People would be getting hurt left and right, missing their entrances. So I'd be awful at it.
No, I was so type A. I devised a little procedure in which if the actors flubbed or missed a line during rehearsal, I had a little form that was page, line, and I would write the lines that they had missed and then pass them out to the actors at the end of the rehearsal. They actually really appreciated it.
Yeah, it's better than sitting there for an hour and a half taking notes,
Yeah, that was so not my job, though. I knew nothing about stage management, really. I just made it up. But I enjoyed that. Then I got to work in the costume department in the second year. I spent hours making Elizabethan ruffs, which
Sure.
ended up never being used for some reason. They canceled the Shakespeare show, but that's time consuming.
Yeah.
And then, so this is the fluke. This is how I got into singing as a profession. I got invited through some connection. You know who it was? This brings it back to Liz. So I auditioned for this musical that Liz was directing. And I met a guy named Algernon Damasa, who was my leading man. He was great. He was an actor and a Buddhist monk. And he was a lovely man. He actually ended up marrying my ex-husband and myself. He was a great guy. He now lives in New Mexico, and he's a father, and he is a journalist in New Mexico. He's a really interesting, very cool man. He was my sort of love interest in Liz's musical. And he was part of a group that sang madrigals at the Theatricum Botanicum in Topanga Canyon. I don't know if you know this place. It's it's called Shakespeare's Theatricum Botanicum, outdoor theater. They do Shakespeare in the summer.
Yes, I went and looked at that as a wedding venue when we were looking for places to get married. We went and looked. We went up and looked at that. Yeah, beautiful.
It's in Topanga Canyon. They do Shakespeare all summer, and we would dress up in Renaissance garb and sing madrigals for an hour before, in 95-degree heat, by the way, before the shows. And it was just fun to sing again. I had really missed it because I did love it in high school. Through that group, we got hired to sing a high holiday service. And as you know, as any opera singer knows who does the high holidays, that is a marathon, right? The Rosh Hashanah and the Yom Kippur is days, 8 hours of singing. Yeah, days, right. And the days are long. Mm-hmm. And I think I was 21 or 22 maybe. And I just didn't have the stamina to sing for 8 hours. So I sang, I guess this was Yom Kippur because this was the second weekend. I sang all day and I woke up the next morning and I had to do the next day and I woke up with nothing, no voice. And I, drank hot tea and tried my best to get through it and barely made it through the rest of that day. And probably would have been fine if I had just rested, but I was also working as a personal trainer at Gold's Gym. This is what actors would do. You get a job as a personal trainer because it's flexible, right? Sure. I've had so many careers. I was a sword fighter. When I was acting, I was sword fighting, personal training. It was a totally different life.
Me too. Same thing.
Yeah, you sword fighting, personal training? Come on.
Well, I never personal training, but I used to fence.
Come on. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I fenced in college a little bit. Yeah. Do
you still have your foils?
Sure.
Come on. I have them in my trunk. We should do it.
Yeah, no, as a matter of fact, my son, when he was, he's 8 now, William, and when he was, I think, 4 or 5, he found my foil in the garage and made us enroll him into fencing classes because he was just so cool. Yeah, it was really fun.
You like it?
Of course, he started getting tagged and he was out. But
Yeah,
so he lasted about a year.
it's-
I mean, just about a year. He did okay.
It's like physical chess, It's
Yes,
like
I love fencing.
so we did fencing. I worked at a company called Swordplay, so it was like an actual fencing studio where people would train for like Olympic style fencing, but then they had a
Sure.
whole team of stage combatants for film
Sure.
and television. And that was connected through a theater school because there people were teaching our stage combat classes, and I really loved stage combat. So I went back to work at the gym all week, hoarse.
Yeah.
And gyms are so loud, and I was training, and by the end of the week, I had like this vice feeling around my throat, like this ache. And this ache was constant, and it hurt so much to talk. It just hurt even if I wasn't talking, but it really hurt to talk. And it didn't go away for 6 months. And I was despondent. I was lost.
I mean, you went to a doctor,
ENT.
right? Yeah.
I went to
what'd
an
they
ENT.
say?
There's nothing wrong with my cords. They couldn't find anything wrong. I mean, looking back, knowing what I know now, studying voice, teaching, I mean, it was obvious I had a muscular strain. I was clearly using probably my
tendons
SCMs were active,
sure.
the tendons and my laryngeal elevators were like in my nose, and like everything was just tight, and I just didn't have any other tools to support my speaking voice. So these muscles were just in this constant pattern of strain. But nobody told me that. I even went to a speech pathologist for a few sessions, and even they didn't seem to like grok on it. And I've seen students now in my private studio, and when a student comes in and tells me that they have pain and I see them speaking or singing, I mean, it's so clear to me. And I wish that I had seen somebody who was like, oh yeah, I know what's going on. Like it was so clear. Not at the time. So
what do you do as a voice teacher to work to clear that up for somebody?
Well, something has to carry the energetic load of the voice, So if it's not, people will do what's instinctive, and what's usually instinctive is supporting with basically anything from here up, or
right.
Using the muscles of the neck and the throat and constricting,
rather
and
than
thinking
having that yell position.
Yeah,
low.
exactly. So a lot of what we do, it's kind of like a rub the tummy, pat the head kind of thing. We pull energy out of the neck by inviting
Displace
them to, we invite them to like gently move the head left and right so they're not locking the neck. We invite them to find the feeling of sort of softness in the throat, like you might be about to yawn or sneeze, so that they're not constricting. And then the opposite end of that spectrum is we have to add energy lower down into the pelvic floor and abdominal complex. So
breath energy.
So I'll ask them to like pull just a little bit of weight onto their heels so that their hips are not like in front of them, and the hips are a little bit more underneath, and they feel just a little bit more of that very gentle grounding activation of the pelvic floor. And I'll invite them to feel that sort of suspension of the rib cage, and invite them to sort of float the rib cage as they sing, and so they're not squeezing. So it's just like you take a little away here and you add a little bit down there.
Good. I'm doing it right. That's all I wanted to know.
It's a slow process to rehabilitate the body. It takes a lot of diligence. And I was lucky enough to, I think it might've been 4 months after this, I'd quit my job. I didn't speak for 2 weeks. Nothing helped. I had been hired at the beginning of that process to do like a caroling group, and I had to quit that because I couldn't ever attend any of the rehearsals. So I was just lost, and I decided to go back to school for singing so that I would never injure myself again. And I ended up at PCC.
Terrific.
I was so lucky because at PCC I started studying with Gail Gordon, who really took me under her wing. She's a lovely, lovely woman. And within a couple weeks of just learning what support was and how to do it, which, takes 10 minutes to explain and 10 years to master. And I fumbled for years, but at least I had enough. The ache started slowly going away. And then what I did is I very deliberately used the way that I would breathe for singing and the way that I would think of my resonance for singing for speaking.
Right.
So I would speak, and then I would take a really calm breath and notice that my neck was really soft and make sure I was really talking in the resonance, and then take another breath. So I was a little weird for a bit, but I had to. Like, I kind of had to figure out how to do it on my own.
Sure.
I also met Don Brinegar, who was also a very important part of my...
I was just going to say, Don. I studied with Don for a little bit too, and he was what a great pedagogue he is.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, the word magician is thrown around a lot. And those two people were so fundamental in my singing. And
Sure.
It was at PCC when I took one of those performance classes where it's like everybody in the music department is taking it. So you have like a clarinetist who has to go and perform. It's like a studio class.
Sure.
And then, so I sang De Vieni non tardar.
Sure.
Knew nothing about pronouncing Italian, but I was rolling my R's like crazy everywhere, not knowing that that's not a thing. But I really thought I was doing it really well. Mm-hmm. And people after were like, oh, your acting was good, or, and they really seemed to respond to it. And then it was like an epiphany. It was like acting, classical music, which I'd always loved because we sang it in choir, opera.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was my epiphany.
We have
and I
the
was
same
like 20.
Story. It's so funny.
Are you I feel like we've talked about this. And I was like, how old were you? I was like maybe 23.
24.
Yeah. Yeah, it was late. It was, somewhere around 23
I was at Santa
24.
Monica College. You were at Pasadena City College. I was at Santa Monica College. Same thing happened. I got up to sing Granada, and at the end of my singing, I didn't read any music. I didn't know what I could barely even understand how to read music. Like, if it weren't for the printed words underneath the staves,
you wouldn't know where you are.
I wouldn't know what I was looking at. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was like my first clue into thinking, oh, it's just like reading a book. It's left to right, and then we go down. I mean, seriously, like I didn't understand music at all. And then after I sang, everybody was like, oh my God,
you're really good.
I've been accepted to UCLA's creative writing program. So I was off to be a writer at UCLA. And then I discovered that I could sing in this class that I needed to transfer. I needed another couple classes to transfer. And then I thought, oh, writing?
Did you end up going to UCLA for voice?
No, it's so funny. No, they offered me a scholarship for creative writing, which I turned down in favor of studying music. And then 3 years later, after Santa Monica College, I applied to UCLA again and got a scholarship for singing and turned them down again. And they have not spoken to me since because I went to college.
They're like, you can't fire me. I quit. That's funny.
Yeah, but singing teachers it's like they're like a therapist. If you don't gel with the faculty, the music faculty, and you don't get a good vibe from them, and you're not on the same page, or
absolutely,
and I didn't get. I mean, UCLA's a terrific school. It's obviously one of the best schools around, but I really got such a great vibe from the teachers and the faculty at Cal State Fullerton. And so they didn't offer me a scholarship either. So I chose them. I ended up I
transferred to UCLA and I did my undergrad, finished my undergrad there, but I completely agree with what you're saying. And when my students ask, because now I have seniors who graduate every year in my program.
Sure.
And when we talk about the ones that want to go on to study music, I always tell them the most important thing is who are you studying with and how much stage time are you getting? I think more than anything else in a program.
Yeah. And Fullerton, I was the guy for 4 years. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get the experience.
I did all the solos.
You did all the
roles.
stuff.
Yeah. So that was really big. Did you study with Tim, or who did you study with at UCLA?
UCLA, my first year.
Or Shigemi?
They had kind of an open studio thing. No, Shigemi was at USC.
Oh, USC.
And Cal State.
Long Beach?
Northridge.
Northridge. Yeah, maybe.
I studied my first year with Michael Dean, who's a very kind man. And then the second year I studied with Vladimir Chernov, who's also a very kind man.
I like Vladimir. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got to sort of, they had kind of like an open door studio policy, which I actually really liked.
Nice.
So I got to try on a couple different things. And then I went on to CCM and I studied with Barbara Hahn there. Mm-hmm. And
I love Cincinnati.
And it's
such a great town.
Yeah, it really grew on me. I was really attached to LA and I was really bummed about moving to the Midwest. And sort of a small city. But it's amazing how fast that time goes by. And I was going to go to New York. I was like, okay, this is what opera singers do. We go to New York and then a film that I had done 10 years before I graduated from my master's degree, this independent film, very quirky, black and white, space alien 1950s picture. It was a real hit.
Do you want to tell me the name or no?
It's called The Ghastly Love of Johnny X. It's an amazing film. So this film we had shot for a week in like 2002 or something like that. Or maybe, yeah. And they had been trying to get the money to finish the film. And amazingly, they got the money. And I was going to go to Germany to do like a program in Weimar for that summer, after I finished grad school. And they were like, we've got the money, come back. And I was like, no, guys, I'm not acting anymore. I really want to do opera. And I wasn't playing hard to get. I really, truly was like, no, I'm moving on. And they kept calling me and they're like, we'll throw a little bit of money at you. And so I accidentally negotiated a decent enough fee that it was worth it to lose the $1,500 that I had put down at Weimar. And I went back to LA in June of 2010 and shot a film. And I was like, I love this place. It's like paradise here. And I was like, but I was supposed to go to New York. Like, what do I do? Like, I can't go to LA. And then I just was like, I can do whatever I want.
Sure.
I'm 28 years old. I have my master's degree. Like, if I want to live in Los Angeles, I can live in Los Angeles. I can teach here. I had already started teaching. And so I just packed up and I went back to Cincinnati, like packed up all my stuff, sold my piano, which was heartbreaking, but I came back to LA. That's when I started teaching like as a job. You know, I started teaching at ADA and AMDA, excuse me.
Yeah. Was Julian there? Julian Fielder, was he there at the time?
Yes. Yes, he was.
Yeah, like Julian. I used to sing with him at LA Opera. Yeah. You know, it's funny when you're talking about this decision to come back to LA and not go to Germany and not go to New York. I have a couple of, got some action outside. Oh yeah. Somebody's having a bad day. It's an ambulance. I can look back at my life and see very clearly like 2 or 3 really important crossroads.
Yes.
And is that true with this decision? I mean, can you look back at some things, like very particular moments where the decision made all the difference?
Yes. One of them was starting to teach.
Right.
Which was an accident. I was trying to think of how to make money. I was starting to study voice, and I wanted to teach, not because I frankly had any particular interest in it, but I just thought it'd be a good way to make money as a singer. Mm-hmm. And I ran into a friend, a colleague, a sort of an acquaintance that I had met. I swear this was at a party Liz threw at her downtown loft.
Yeah.
Because she had gone to the American Academy in New York, actually. Right. I ran into this girl that I had been in school with, and I said, how are you? What are you doing? She's like, oh, I'm teaching voice. And I didn't really remember her as a singer. Mm-hmm. I remember like she had a voice, but she wasn't like, I had more musical training than her.
So if she can do it, I can do it.
Yes, exactly. I was like, how did you do this? She was like, oh, I just used the warm-up tapes that our teacher gave us while we were at school. And I was like, that was exactly the thought. You just have to give yourself permission. And that completely changed my life. I feel sorry for my first students that I experimented on, while I was still doing my undergraduate degree. But teaching became very much half of my musical identity. I still...
Sure. And income, yeah.
Very much my income and performing has always been, I feel, sort of my own primary identity and my own personal sort of satisfaction and growth as an artist. But the teaching became more than just a way to make money. I felt like I was good at it and I felt like I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And
we have the same trajectory. I've got to say, this is very strange.
Is it?
We both started in junior college from Cal State Fullerton. I went to Cincinnati and sang.
Wait, you went to... Have we not had this discussion? Did you study at CCM?
I didn't study at CCM, but Cincinnati
you went
Opera
to Cincinnati.
hired me to
Yes,
to sing.
That's right. Yes.
And I was there for 8 months, and then I went to Dayton for a couple of months and sang there. And then a couple years ago, you've been at it a lot longer than I have as far as teaching, but I think about 3 years ago, I get this call from Debbie Allen on my cell phone.
Right.
And she's like, we need a voice teacher, and you were recommended. Mm-hmm. Do you teach voice? Are you interested? And I said, yes and yes. And the truth was no and yes. And I just learned how to do it really quickly. And when you said I really feel sorry for my first few students, I'm the same way. I just took what I knew after 10, 15 years of voice lessons and applied it, which turned out to be okay, actually.
I always think of that line in Ghostbusters when... when he says, Ray, if somebody asks you if you're a god, you say yes,
Yes.
right? I always think of that line because I feel like every opportunity I've ever had, I have not felt ready for.
Right.
All of the teaching gigs that I got, you know, when I got this job at CS Arts to run the Vocal Arts Conservatory, I had never opened a school before.
Right.
I had never led a music department before. But even getting the job teaching at AMDA, I was 28 and I walked in the hall. I've been teaching for like 6 years privately. But I walked in the halls and I remember looking and I'm like, oh crap, these are college students. Like who the hell am I? And I got the job and then you just learn, you just grow into it. Or when someone was like, do you want to sing? That was my first role with pop. Stephen Carr actually called me and was like, hey, we lost our Fiordiligi. Do you want to sing? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this role. Yeah. I mean, every role I've ever sung has felt like that.
Yeah. The very first role I sang was Don Jose of all things. I didn't read a note of music.
Lord.
And up there singing the whole role. And I've said yes most often, but I've also had to cancel a couple times. There was one where
really?
Yeah, the one there was a Wagner piece that I was asked to sing, and I said sure, and then I started looking at it, and I thought, I actually can't sing this. I can't do this.
I think no,
and I think it's
yeah. There's an important line for sure, but I do feel like the hardest thing I ever did was filling in for this Paisiello Barbiere, which was kind of it was like a kind of part of the outreach. It was part of the Figaro Unbound festival when Ghosts of Versailles was happening, and we were in that. Yes. You were in Ghosts of Versailles, and I was in Ghosts of Versailles.
Yeah.
And so Josh Winograde called me out of the blue and was like, hey, you know, our soprano, our young artist, we think is sick and probably has to pull out of this. And the performance was I think the performance was 2 weeks from the day that he called me.
Oh, God.
So I had to learn and memorize and stage the role simultaneously. So I was staging, and it was like Rosina. And I was staging, and Conlon was conducting, by the way, which was like an insane amount of pressure. So I remember like I would be up till like 3 a.m. trying to learn the notes and memorize at the same time and learn the recits. And then the next morning I would be staging something that I had only seen for the first time the night before. And I remember being so exhausted and really feeling like this is not possible. I'm not maybe capable of this. But that was one of those you say yes moments, right?
Yes.
Josh Winograde calls you and says, do you want to sing the lead? And James Conlon is conducting in a week.
Sure.
You're like, yes, of course I want to do that.
How did it turn out?
It turned out great. I wanted to write a book called How to Learn an Opera in a Week or a Song by Tomorrow, because I realized that memorization is my superpower. Seriously, that is my superpower. I just learn it really fast. And I think it's from memorizing lines when I was 10 years old. You get the sides, that's the script.
Sure.
And you have an audition the next day and you have to memorize it. So I just got into the habit of memorizing at a very young age. So I just memorized very quickly. I just learned music and memorized very, very quickly.
I'll tell you, for me, memorizing has to do with emotionalizing the text and making it personal and learning it quickly that way. Also, writing it down over and over really helps. That's a great tool. What are your tricks?
The first thing I do is the music, and I try to create context, especially learning anything that is a little bit atonal or weird or new. I'll look for any kind of repetition or structure, and if there's no structure or pattern to the rhythms or melodies, I'll just arbitrarily make it up. I'll be like, this time it's a third, and the next time it's a fifth, and those have nothing to do with each other, but this is what it is. And then I sing it. I'll sing it down the octave so that I don't tire myself out.
Sure.
I'll make sure that I'll just break it down in little pieces. I'll make sure that the rhythm, I'm very comfortable with the rhythm. I'm comfortable with the language, everything in rhythm. And then you're not gonna like this answer, but it kind of memorizes itself.
Yeah. For me, also the muscle memory of the mouth. Like if I'm reading and learning that way, I always mouth the words. The mouth kind of learns it on its own in some ways. Yeah. It's just like when you add staging or blocking to a piece of music, that physicalization helps to reinforce even the intervals, even the words, even the tune for sure.
Totally.
It all kind of helps. And I think that's just from years, I'm on my 16th year with LA Opera, and that just comes with knowing that that's how it works, where we'll be a week away from curtain and everybody's panicking that we just don't know it. And then somehow...
And then it always gets there, right? It always gets there. The one thing I will say that I do is I have a little testing process, which once I think I'm sort of close to knowing it, I haven't officially memorized. I've just been learning it and getting it into my voice and singing it. And then I will play a recording that I like while I'm doing something else, while I'm going for a hike, while I'm washing the dishes, while I'm driving. And I just kind of go along in my head or sort of sotto voce. And then what I do is the moment I realize I don't know what's about to come next, I will stop it and rewind it and go back. So that's my little testing process. Right. So my goal is to be able to have my brain sort of cough forth the right line and the right melody when I'm not paying attention, so that it's coming from my subconscious sort of, automatic.
Yes, it cold. Yeah, somebody could put a gun to your head and you could sing the thing. Yeah, that's what I tell my students.
I feel like I bet you're the same way, but I'm sometimes surprised. I have kind of like a reputation for knowing my music really well. In fact, like knowing other people's music, somebody drops a line, I'll know what their line is, not on purpose, just because I've just know the score really well. And, they'd be like, Katherine's like a robot or something like that. And I've always felt like, I thought that was our job. Like, I thought that was the primary requirement of the job, is show up knowing your music and sing it as best as you can. And I'm surprised how flexible that is for some performers. I just feel like as a soprano, you can't. Especially if you're like a great tenor or a really charming baritone, you get a lot of latitude on that. But sopranos, like, we have to know our shit, because I just think we feel so replaceable.
Well, there are just so many more women in general that are interested in music as children, I think. I don't know why. We're really sticklers with music in our house, especially with William. I mean, William takes 2 guitar lessons a week. He takes a piano lesson a week. He takes music, like composition, electronic, like GarageBand composition class.
That's so great.
And he's in the LACC. He's in the LA Children's Chorus.
That's
also.
So great. I think that's fun. Whether they ever want to do anything with it professionally, and frankly, probably as professional musicians, we often hope not. Yeah, exactly. So I was just thinking about Michael's son Luke plays trumpet. Yeah. And I was thinking about the twins coming the other night and thinking, like, I would want them to each pick an instrument. Like, you can take piano lessons. You can play. Yeah, like, it's just something. I want them to be able to speak that language and to recognize beauty when they hear it.
I agree. The aesthetics. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let's talk about, we're going to jump forward now, because I really do want to get to your work as a music administrator. And how you got into that, because it's a leap from acting and singing in high school to pursuing acting as a young adult, and then becoming a teacher, and now you're running a program. How did that happen, and what's that like, and what are some of the challenges, and what are the rewards that go along with that? That
was another one of those crossroad moments. That was the fluke was a sort of an acquaintance, a good friend of one of my friends at CCM. We were friends on Facebook. His name's Taryn Shafer, and he started at OSHA, Orange County School of the Arts. I think he was conducting their wind ensemble. Then he became Dean of Arts, and then he became, I believe, I'm going to get his title wrong, like vice president of the foundation, or, very high up in the OSHA Foundation. So he posted the director jobs. Each conservatory has a director, dance, instrumental music, classical voice was the one that they posted for. So they were starting this new school in Duarte they posted this in mid, sort of early, like fall 2016. Michael and I were about to get married in December 2016, and there was a job for director of instrumental music and a job for director of classical voice. And we were like, hey, why not?
Sure.
I mean, Michael had been teaching at USC for like 13 years or 11 years. And I had been teaching voice at AMDA for 7 years, teaching privately and performing. And I'd started to get the feeling like I don't know if you've had this, but this feeling like you're starting to weigh this lifestyle where your freedom is more important than anything. If I need to drop or reschedule or change my lessons because I have a role or because I'm going to fly to St. Louis and sing Stella and Streetcar, like nothing is more important than that. The downside is there's no responsibility.
Yeah.
There's no stability, first of all. There's no responsibility. And I was starting to feel like, I was 35 and I was like, maybe like, what's my next role? I was feeling like, the little bossy pants 10-year-old in me was wanting a voice. And I was thinking like, I want to be a leader in some way. And this opportunity just randomly presented itself. And Michael and I were like, hey, this sounds cool. And there were 3 rounds and Michael and I both made it to the final round. And we were like, oh my God, like maybe we're going to get this. Long story short, I got the gig and he didn't. And this was a week before our wedding. So that was a bit of an adjustment, like, oh crap, like that almost worked out, but didn't quite. Delightfully, amazingly, Michael this year just started as the chair of the music department at Loxa. So it's like we've both found our place, which is so great. And I think it's even better actually that we're at different schools now because we each get like our own little fiefdom,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I got this gig as the director of classical voice. This is the role that Maria Lazarova had at the time. She was in my interview. She then became the Dean of Arts. And I knew nothing. I mean, I just knew nothing about running a school, but I did have strong ideas about how I wanted to train young singers. Like you're around young singers enough. You've been through a music program and you know what you wish you had.
Sure.
You know what worked and you know what you wish you had. I really wish that we'd had more acting training. I really felt passionate about helping middle school and high school age students become better musicians. I hate the reputation that singers have of being shitty musicians. I just hate it. And I wanted to do something about that. And I also wanted to be thoughtful about moving the training forward so we weren't sort of stuck in an old model, singing the same rep, stuck in the sort of treadmill of like the only path is you get the summer program and then you get then you're tapped to be like in the year-long young artist program. It's like that wasn't my path. I wasn't lucky enough to be tapped. So I just kind of wanted to break that open. Strangely, after the first round of auditions, the school hadn't even opened yet. I realized we were not going to get enough classical singers to fill this program. It just was this is in Duarte, which is like 10 miles east of Pasadena. It's just a very different
community,
different constituents, different interests in the singers. So I suggested to the higher ups that we destroy the classical voice program and we call it the vocal arts program. And the conservatory, Vocal Arts Conservatory. Actually, I have to give credit where credit is due. I was like, what should I call it? Michael was like, call it Vocal Arts. So that was Michael's idea for the name. But I basically
he didn't get
was
the
like,
job, but he named it.
He did name it. He did give me the idea for the name. But I basically was like, I need to make a program where we can sing any genre of music.
Sure.
And
I
kind of struggled.
Sneak in the classical music and the cracks.
Yeah, exactly. Like I struggle with that because I of course, first of all, I was like, well, I clearly, if I want to do a classical voice program, well, I'm going to do the diction and I'm going to do art song. And it was just such a laid out path for me. And when we blew up the curriculum, when I say we, it's just me. I was just me by myself leading the conservatory at the beginning until I hired anybody. I was like, I have no idea what the curriculum is now. What do I teach students if they're only interested in ever singing pop music, but how can I convince them that they should care about learning about musicianship, diction, vocal technique, emotional commitment, stagecraft? Like, how do I convince them that they should care? And that became sort of like the central question of the conservatory. So our first year we had 31 students and maybe 5 faculty members. And now I have 15 people working for me, and we have about 100 students in our 4th year. And I just decided that choir would still be a central part of the curriculum, that they would have choir twice a week. They all have to take theory twice a week, all the way up until the end of high school. And then the rest of the curriculum kind of developed from there. I tried out a lot of stuff. I tried out a class where they got to create their own musical. We tried out various vocal styles classes where they try on different genres of singing. I did an opera class, an operetta class, an Italian diction class, which sort of didn't fly. But now I just have a straight up English diction class, which is working better.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them were like, why are we studying Italian? And it's hard. I feel like most of the work that I do at the beginning of any course is really trying to hook them into why this is valuable for them. But I really felt like if I could get this conservatory to work, we would be doing a real service to the music industry, because we would be churning out a generation or generations of singers who are now going to go into commercial music, contemporary music, spoken word, whatever, with an awareness of how music works and how singing works. The other thing I was really passionate about was demystifying vocal technique, because it's a controversial topic, but a lot of people just teach what they were taught but never studied it themselves. So they're just repeating phrases that their choir teacher said when they were 15 years old. And I really wanted to make sure that we were, as Richard Miller says, neither inventing acoustics nor physiology when we were teaching singing. I love that phrase so much. And I asked for advice. I asked Gloria Gassi, the woman who taught me when I first started it. I asked Don Brinegar. I was like, what do I do, Don? And he said to me, number one, make sure that every student feels successful every day. That's what he said to me. And then he also said, and because happy students will go home and tell parents, and happy parents will tell administrators.
Right.
And then you'll get to keep your job.
Right. We're in the same boat. We're in the same boat.
Yeah. But for its own sake, I think about that a lot, that every student gets to feel successful every day.
I always ask. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yes.
No. Oh, I was just going to say the other perk of this program was that I got to start directing. I've written like 6 shows. So I would create a class like operetta, and then I would just cast the repertoire to the singers and then create a story. So we did one called the Operatic Radio Hour, which was like a 1940s radio drama in which singing different operetta pieces. So I got to direct opera workshops, operetta, a folk song show. Last year, we did a full production of Side by Side by Sondheim. And I finally got to start directing, which I really enjoyed and really gave me a taste for like, what opera program at a college can I run in 10 years, you know? And, and how can I be the next Peter Cazares, basically?
Yeah.
Because I really enjoy that as well. So that's been great growth for me as well.
That's terrific. What I was going to say what was that I have the same discussion with my students too. It's not only vocal technique. I think vocal technique is almost secondary when kids are so young and their cords aren't. My kids are younger than yours. Their cords aren't fully formed. What I talk about mostly is the very first question I ask is why do we sing? Why sing? Why sing to convey an idea at all? What is singing? What's the purpose of singing? And it's my conclusion has always been that music alone is not sufficient and words alone are not sufficient. And that when you use both simultaneously, the profundity that you can express is greater than the sum of its parts.
I love that.
And it's not possible to communicate in such a deep way without the marriage of those two things. And there's a reason that it exists. Why does singing exist at all? It's to share ideas that we can't do with music or words alone.
It is somehow the human voice vibrating in singing as opposed to just speaking is some sort of direct conduit to the human psyche, you know,
condition. And yes.
Yes, it really is more moving than anything else I've experienced. I remember, and I'm particularly drawn to acoustic. I mean, it's great if it's amplified, but hearing the unamplified human voice in just a proper acoustical setting, I will never forget hearing Don Upshaw sing Oswaldo Golical's 3 songs for sopranos and orchestra, which I ended up performing with Michael in the 6 months after we met, which was amazing, with his orchestra at USC. She sang it at Disney Hall. I was singing, this was in 2007, I think. I was sitting in the very last row of the last balcony, directly in front of her. She's unamplified. And I felt the vibration of her voice in my chest. And I will never forget that feeling. And that's when I was like, oh, a person sings and they bump a molecule, and that molecule bumps another air molecule, and it hits, it actually touches you physically. There is a physical connection that happens with the voice in a room. Right. And I just never forgot that.
And then it's gone.
Yeah, right? Forever.
That's the magical thing about it. It's like
that's one of the most moving.
You can talk to me about it right now, all these years later, and it's like you're there. But but that moment only really lasts. The second you think about it, it's gone. The moment you notice it, it's already gone.
That's
transient.
A beautiful
thing. Yeah, that's a beautiful thing about.
Oh, I mean, theater. you can really wax poetic about the sort of metaphysics of singing and music, and that I think there is a transcendent experience that happens in an audience. And I don't mean this in any religious context. I just mean you are crossing over into another spectrum of human experience. And there's something about music, and I feel, and I think you do too, because this is why we do it, particularly about singing, the human voice, you know?
Yes.
It is the purest way to get there. Oof.
Yes. This is how I motivate students, even young students that don't have the emotional currency to really do it authentically at this point in their lives. You know, I'm talking about 10, 12, 13-year-old girls and boys. But if I can get them when I first started singing, when I first started teaching, my only goal was to not make them worse.
I think that's a really solid goal.
Don't ruin them. Don't do anything that makes them worse than when they started. So
I'm not sure I've ever articulated that for myself, but I think I really resonate with that when I started teaching. You know, like, just don't mess anything up.
Don't screw it up. Yeah.
First, do no harm.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Yes. So if I can just instill in them a wonder or a love for the act of singing, or for music in general, or for the voice, I feel like I've been successful for an 11-year-old.
Totally.
Just to not turn them off from music education, which by the time you get to college is very easy to do when you start deconstructing the things that we're talking about, these magical, transcendent parts that make up the whole of music. And as soon as you start picking those apart and saying, oh, it's the open fifths and the French horns that make me feel that way in Copeland, suddenly you don't see the prairie in your mind anymore. You just see notes and understand how they're manipulating you, almost like when you take a screenwriting class and the 3-act structure and you build tension and, oh, well, that's how that happens. It can spoil things a little bit.
Do you feel like that happens for you? I mean, it's impossible sometimes to watch performances without having that sort of evaluative part of the brain going on. But do you feel that even when you see a masterful performance, are you able to turn that off and just receive?
I actually,
when it's done well,
I do the opposite. I focus on turning it off. It's almost like editing in a film or TV show. If you notice the editing, there's a problem. Editing follows the way that we blink our eyes, and it's the timing of the blink, and it's the timing of the way that our brain works naturally and shifting focus. When a bad editor betrays that, it's impossible not to see, even if you're untrained in that. And music is the same way. If somebody's singing out of tune, they're singing out of tune. There's just there's no enjoying that, whether you're a trained musician or not. So I try to just put myself with the common, I don't want to say common man, that's just so like trite, but I
I
try not to be that guy. I try to just be a person that is looking for something of meaning that will affect my day or my train of thought or the way that I see the world. I feel like that's what art is supposed to do, is raise questions and answer them. And I look for that.
That's good. I feel like I really struggle to turn off that sort of evaluative, even when
Analysis,
I'm loving. Yes, even when I'm loving something, I still want to understand how it was put together so that I can use that or learn from that. I mean, I really do. I just marvel, but it doesn't stop me from enjoying it. But the other thing that I think about with my students, which surprised me the most, because I had only ever taught adults in college until I had no secondary school experience before, ever. And I didn't expect to like my students as people as much as I do. I just love them. They're so, and I mean, I'm talking about like a group of 100 kids, and each one of them is different, but I love seeing them develop. I love seeing them grow, and probably maybe only 10 or 15% of them want to go on and do music, right?
Sure.
So what is the value then of teaching all of them as if they're going to be professional musicians, which is just my value system. And I can't do any less than when you say you want to learn singing, I'm going to take you seriously, right? Whether you want to do it for a living or not. So then what I learned and what I believe is that studying music, learning how to express and connect with your emotions, learning how to communicate, learning how to authentically represent the human experience through song and singing and performance, regardless of the repertoire, truly any repertoire, I just think makes you an empathetic
Yes, a better
human.
person.
I
Yes.
just think it makes you a better person. I really, really believe that. And that's what I focus on with my students. We spend a lot of time talking about expression, communication, authenticity. Yes, there's technical stuff, but more of my time is spent really, in our coaching classes. I'm really just trying to help them be comfortable in their own skin and feel safe to express who they are through music.
Right.
And then give them the tools to do that as well as they can musically.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the capacity to recognize and recreate beauty in your life is something that is fundamental to being a whole person in a civilized society that has everything at its disposal. Like, you can choose to watch Bobby McFerrin perform on stage and get a whole audience to sing along, or you can choose to watch snipers in action on YouTube. It's what we choose. Like, what we choose to watch is what we learn to appreciate, I think, as young people. And that's kind of one of my big goals, is to encourage people to seek out, recognize, and make beauty in the world, for themselves.
I love that you said that. I feel that it's hard to come up with an argument for it, and I'm sure there are people who could write essays about it, and I don't feel equipped, but I do feel very strongly that aesthetic has inherent value, just inherently.
Sure.
And there's just nothing that's going to persuade me otherwise.
I agree.
I
agree. So tell me, what's next for you as far as performing and teaching and the program? What are you guys up to in school? How are you dealing with the whole online thing? Are there productions to be had? What's next?
We've been online for almost a year now.
Sure.
It will be a year come March. So we've been entirely online. It's, as you probably know, incredibly hard to teach music over Zoom. Simultaneous choir rehearsals or ensemble rehearsals are impossible.
Sure.
So our teachers have had to be very creative, and I'm insanely grateful and deeply indebted to the dedication and quality. My teachers are so brilliant. They're so educated. I think I have 5 doctors teaching for me in a high school. I mean, these guys are so great. They're so committed. They love our students so much, and they give so much more than they can ever be compensated for, as most teachers do.
Sure.
So we really had to pivot. And what I told my faculty this whole year is that our goal really is shifting, and it can't be about how much content we're cramming down their throats. We have to really back off how much we're trying to teach them. And my goal, my phrase this year is to give our students a meaningful experience of music through online learning. And that's it. They have to come through this year still loving music, which is hard because they're tired. They're so tired of being on Zoom, rehearsing a part and recording something alone in your bathroom to see it, 2 months later in a virtual choir performance is not gratifying. So I just want the kids to still love music and still feel like they had a meaningful experience this year. And we've been able to do some really amazing work in our coaching classes, even online. I see growth. It's a weird experience. I have students that I've never, except for when they came and sang for me when they first applied for the school a year ago, that I have never seen in person, right? Because they're new to the program and they've never got to meet each other.
I have
in
a
that
few
community.
Of those, yeah.
Yes, right. And that community that we built, it was so beautiful. Our conservatory was so lovely. It was not competitive. It was not catty. It was so supportive and wonderful. And it was such a deliberate culture that we created. And it's so hard for these kids to sing in a choir and not get to experience that with each other. One of the things, we did some virtual choir performances. One of the things that we did that I was particularly proud of was a show called the Mtv Radio Hour, which I directed and produced last semester, which was sort of like basically a half-hour review of 80s music videos. So I think we had 16 performers, 17 because we had a saxophonist play the Careless Whisper melody, which was really cool. All students, and they did Billy Joel, they did David Bowie, they did Whitney Houston, they did Annie Lennox, and we set up COVID protocols, and we had the kids come in one at a time and record individually all of their songs. They recorded all their backup vocals at home. I had a great audio mixer who mixed it, and then we had a separate day of shooting with COVID protocols. We had 2 rooms running simultaneously. It was 32 hours of filming done in 2 days simultaneously, 2 rooms running Saturday and Sunday. And we scheduled these kids in 20-minute blocks, and they had to shoot all by themselves. And some kids were in 6 different videos, right? They're singing a lead and verse in 2 and then backup in 3. So they'd have a costume change. I mean, it was an enormous amount of work. I got to direct my first film production, which was really cool. We had 2 DPs. And then I edited this beast myself on Final Cut Pro, which took me 2 months to assemble all of this, about 6 weeks. And I was really proud of it. It was a half-hour show. I learned to edit on Final Cut Pro at the beginning of the pandemic when I started I knew that I was going to have to do virtual choir stuff. And I'm like, this is going to cost us thousands of dollars. I like filmmaking, obviously, from being a child on set. I'm like, I feel like I could have an eye for this. I'm going to do this. And then I ended up doing this 8-episode Shakespeare Sing series for LA Opera Connects. And I improved my editing skills to be, I would say, a talented intermediate, and shot that whole series. So that was kind of my pandemic project, was learning how to edit and film stuff. And that was really fun. I got to explore that side of myself. Editing is like the most satisfying tedium you could possibly have. I think you do some editing,
I do. Yeah.
It's very satisfying and very, very tedious.
Very tedious. Yeah.
Very tedious.
You need a good pillow to sit on for that kind of work.
And yes, and a large screen. Doing it on a laptop for the first couple of days, I literally started to have rings in my vision. And then Michael was like, we're getting you a monitor, because it was just, it was really bad.
Yeah.
So I felt really proud of that. For our conservatory, like, we have a curriculum meeting on Friday. Every year we sort of look at what we're going to do and what we want to adapt. This year in particular, my goal and my sort of the marching orders that I sort of set forward to all the faculty was really to diversify our curriculum, to make sure that the musical examples, the repertoire, the artists that we use as examples, and our subject matters that we study were not all from the same perspective.
Right.
And not from the same cultural, ethnic, racial, linguistic background. And so we've got some really cool classes this year. We created a class, a woman who named Olufemi Gonzalez, who teaches for us. She's a brilliant woman. And she created a class called Resilience in Song, which studies the African-American experience through music and sort of the idols that have populated that repertoire and that story. We have a teacher teaching a really incredible world music class. We have a teacher doing an opera workshop class that's exclusively studying operas that are outside of the canon, focusing on female, non-binary, BIPOC, just any non-conforming or white male opera composer. So I think it's really great to explore that. As much as I love the canon is covered. And our students are also asking for this. They are so ahead of where we are, in our 30s and 40s. They're so, I don't want to use the term woke, but they are awakened, and I feel like we really need to be listening, and we need to be on the right side of history and the right side of the art form in terms of how we're moving it forward. So that's kind of our project this year. And for next year, I don't have the answer to that yet, because I'm going to be talking to my faculty. We're going to figure it out. Yeah. Honestly, frankly, the big project is I'm having twins in July, and that will be my project. I was going to sing Susanna for Pops. Susanna last November. I was thrilled about it. And then, of course, the pandemic happened and that was canceled. I was really, really, really looking forward to that one. And I was very sad that was canceled. That was like one of those actory roles, where you really dig in. So maybe, sometime in the future that opportunity will come back around.
I feel that way about Orchestra Los Angeles. We had
the
gala, all in the books. We took our first gift, took our first donation, and then the whole thing came to a grinding halt. So maybe we'll get that back up next year. We'll see.
I think it will. I really think it will. And I think one thing that I'm glad about with Orchestra LA is that I'm actually glad that we didn't do our soft open launch and then have everything shut down.
That's
because
right.
we just it would have been more devastating to really get it up and running. But I know that has a future, because it's such a special, unique, and important and beautiful thing. And I know that it's gonna happen.
I do too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything
so
else?
Basically,
anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
What do I want to say? I'm just so honored to chat with you. It's
great to catch up.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I just think life is so astonishing sometimes, because I know it sounds silly, but you just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And sometimes it's terrible, like the pandemic, nobody expected that,
Sure.
But other times, I've had times when I was like, oh, I'm never going to sing again. And then I get invited to sing somewhere awesome, or, thinking we were going to have kids and then getting sort of delayed for some health stuff that came up. And then we're like, okay, let's just try again. And then it was freaking twins. And you just can't, predict what's going to happen. Or Michael getting this chair of the music department at Loxa during the pandemic, this incredible position. And I'm just so insanely proud of him. So I kind of feel like we're both finding our place right now in LA, and I kind of want to I feel like with the job that I have now, I grew into the next phase of who I was going to be, this sort of leadership thing. And I'm really interested to see, in 10 years, what does what does it look like?
What that looks like, yeah.
Like what's the next phase of that?
Well, this last year for the pandemic has taught me a couple things. Number one,
Please tell me.
I like country music, which I never liked before.
That was so not what I was expecting you to say.
Yeah,
okay.
I learned that, which is not all country music, but particularly John Prine, which I didn't know anything about until he sadly passed away earlier last year. And I got to listening to John Prine's music and really fell in love with that kind of folk, bluegrass, country music. And then the other thing that I've really learned, and this is an axiom that I think I'll carry forward from the pandemic on through the rest of my life, and that it's a very simple phrase, and that is that tough times don't last, but tough people do. And that's a ray of hope, I think. When I wake up feeling a little bit blue, I just think of that. Tough times don't last, but tough people do. And that's important to remember.
I love that, because I've only, the thing that I kind of been holding on to is only about the first half of that. When I feel like something's struggling, or even something silly like, being pregnant and feeling like, oh, that's a weird pain. Is that going to last for the next 6 months? I just say to myself, everything passes, actually. Everything passes. But I like yours because I like the second half of that. Because,
chin up.
Like everything passes, even the horrible stuff. And if you can persist, you don't know what wonderful things are happening unless you stick around for it.
That's it.
And that's kind of where I feel we are right now. I think of I'll leave you with this. The Simpsons, this
saxophone
episode.
Oh, sorry.
The episode where Mr. Burns has hundreds of monkeys on typewriters trying to, if they just keep typing at random, they'll come up with like the next great American novel. And he looks at one of the pieces of paper that the monkey's typing, and he says, "It was the best of times. It was the bluest of times. You stupid monkeys." And that's just kind of what I feel like right now in my life with what's happening with us. It is the best of times and it is the blurst of times.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
Katherine, it's been so great catching up with you. Thanks for spending so much time with me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
A big thank you to Katherine Powers for that terrific chat. I always like being with Katherine, and hopefully sometime in the next few months we'll be able to raise a glass together in our backyard once again. Thanks for listening. Be kind, do good work, and until next time.
Genius, get onto my show.